Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to The Edge. We're going to have an exciting show tonight. We've got Stan and Augusto already here. Larry's not here yet. But we'll just talk to the guys we have. How's that?
Hey, Stan. How are you?
Good. Where are you at the moment?
I am in North Florida.
North Florida. Oh, where all the action is.
Florida. Yeah, you can say that. We're about 30 miles south of Georgia, the Georgia border.
Okay. All right. Well, you're up kind of clear of some of the action down there, I suppose, but the political thing is what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah. We're about 2.5 hours from Tampa.
Safe place to be.
I'm telling you.
And Larry's here now.
Hello, guys. How you doing, Stan? Thank you so much for coming on, and Augusto, too.
Hi, Larry. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Larry.
Larry.
Now, we're catching the leading edges of the old Isaac up in this area now, running about 25-mile-an-hour winds, and I hope my phones hold up, but we're kind of getting some of the, not really rough weather, but it's not comfortable either, but, you know, we could sure use the rain on this area up here.
It's the same with all of us. We need the rain, I think, well, at least in the southwest and part of the south. I guess Louisiana and Mississippi have got all the rain they can take at the moment.
Well, I know that Augusto said Florida probably had 2 or 3 lifetimes of rain there.
Oh,
yeah.
we've had enough to last us for for months.
Wow.
We had close to 30 inches with Debbie. So I was really praying hard that Isaac wouldn't come this way.
How long did it take to get 30 inches?
3 days.
Boy.
It was nonstop. It started raining on a Sunday, and it didn't stop until Wednesday. I mean, it was not a light rain either. It was pretty strong rain. At times it was like a downpour, and then it would let up a little, and then downpour again. It never stopped for 3 consecutive days. I felt like Noah for a while.
Bet you did.
Everything started flooding. And we live in a kind of a dry area. It has never flooded. And thank God the Lord spared us. It didn't flood either, but it was both properties on both of our sides, to the left and to the right, they both were underwater.
Did anyone lose power for a while?
No. Strangely enough, we didn't lose power. There were no winds really. It was all rain, and but our city really took a big hit. The city hall in our little town was flooded, and sinkholes began to appear all around it. So they had to shut the whole building down and the adjacent buildings.
Sinkholes, one of my favorite topics.
Oh yeah, they had to transfer all the documents, all the legal documents to the library until they resettled into another building. It was pretty bad. There are still areas that have water still standing.
Well, it's either fire, drought, or rain and lightning and hurricanes or landicanes, derechos or something. I tell you, everybody's getting in extremes.
Oh my goodness, it's terrible, Stan. I mean, I was talking to Larry earlier. He was telling me about the earthquake, and I checked it out. 6.8 at the Arctic, near near Iceland, and then a few hours later, a smaller one, 4-point-something, in the Antarctic. And now I have never seen that before like that. Both poles.
No, there's something definitely going on that's not normal. Yeah, we can talk about it later when you get finished there. But I think I understand what's happening.
Well, I'd love to hear it because I sent you an email, Stan, from John Verbatis. He sent me already 2 emails in the past few months. I don't know the man, never heard from him, but I got these 2 emails from him, and he seems to be someone knows what he's talking about. I don't know, but he sent some. And you may know him. He's from Perth, Australia.
Yeah, I saw that in your email, but I don't know that I recognize the name, but I did meet so many people casually there doing lectures all over the place that I could have forgotten, I suppose. But anyway, he's saying the whole biosphere is going to collapse. Is that right?
That is what he's saying. And he's you know, he had an article that he wrote prior that links what's going on with Mount Fuji. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that one, but and he said that when Mount Fuji started acting up, that was going to be a sign that this thing is about to happen.
Well, I don't know how he figured that, but it certainly has done that. He also mentioned about Clinton saying that. Former President Clinton endorsing the axis shift theory, and there are several factors which can affect the axis of the planet, the magnetic field, the gravitational field, everything. But the spin axis, the axis we rotate around every day, is tilted by about 23.5 degrees from straight up and down. Now, even as John Burbate has said, if the polar melts, especially the northern, the Arctic pole, if the melt is putting more water into the oceans, as soon as it becomes fluid, the water will add to the bulge, kind of a spare tire bulge around the middle of the planet where the equatorial forces spin it up higher than normal at the poles, several hundred feet higher in some cases. Now, that will change as that water moves down. It changes the mass spinning around that axis, that 23.5 degree axis. It's like a top that you've spun on the ground. As it gets tired and it's kind of wobbling left and right, if you touch it, it'll do a knee-jerk reaction, and then it gets slower and even worse off. So certainly that change in the mass distribution of the water on the planet could be causing or contributing to the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the crust deformation, and in my opinion, in addition to that, we have another problem inside the planet where the core is expanding. And it does this very infrequently, maybe once or twice before, but the last evidence we have showed that probably in the time of the Old Testament, the very, very Old Testament, in the time of Peleg, that the earth was divided, or in other words, the continent that was one landmass split, and continents formed and raced apart from each other. Now, what the cause was is, up for debate, but we think that what happened was that the core of the planet expanded. It's part of a normal thing with gravitation. As something ages, it expands. And it expanded to where it was a third bigger, or like if you took 25% of the diameter of the Earth off now, it would be what size it was. It was a third bigger from that small size. And if you were to collapse the planet back down 25%, all the continents would fit. But they're not. They're apart like we are now. And we think another expansion phase may be about to start. That's why we're seeing all the sinkholes and the volcanoes and the earthquake activity. It's like stretching a balloon that you've got a picture drawn on. It starts to tear parts of it apart.
That's, from what you're saying, then, that seems to be what is happening, all these sinkholes, happening. We had over 100 sinkholes here from the rain, and, I mean, that is totally ridiculous. But it seems to be happening all over the earth,
Augusto, when you say you had the rain and the sinkholes everywhere, have you ever had this much rain in that region and didn't get sinkholes?
No, we according to the to the old timers, and we've had here like a couple of bad hurricanes, but from what they're saying is, and what they told me was that even during big hurricanes, and and Debbie was not even a hurricane. It was a tropical storm, but it was a monster, and all it did was cause rain. It was a rainmaker. According to what they said, they had never had that much rain like that fall here, and they had, you know, two big ones. But I really found that very strange then saying that, because this, you know, these holes that started appearing everywhere, the sinkholes, that had never happened here, ever. I mean, maybe one little one over here, you know, or another one maybe in Lake City about 23 miles from us, and things like that. But in the same area, you know, 100 or more sinkholes, no.
Well, I understand that down in Florida, there's one state down there had several, 40 or 50 of them around the homes and the golf courses. And my idea is that if you can envision, you know, when you walk down the beach in the sand and it's wet, and how you put a footprint and then it disappears, and how the sand will move when it gets liquefied. Suppose you were to take a block of that sand up and press it real hard on the sides, all sides. You'd hold the sand together, and you wouldn't even have to have like a bottom to the box. You just grab up a chunk of it in these four-sided metal kind of cookie cutter, and you press on it. It'll stay together. But as soon as you release the pressure on it, so that you're not forcing it together, it'll start to cave in. It's got the water there already, but it'll start to cave in and make sinkholes, big ones, in that little chunk of sand. And I think that's definitely the effect we're looking at.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, around the courthouse, I mean, there were several smaller sinkholes, but then there is a big old depression in the center of the street, and they cordon off the whole region, because it seems like the earth could, it could just open up and the whole thing being swallowed. There was a lady here reported that in her backyard, a tree was swallowed. The ground opened up and swallowed the tree straight down. Now, this is the kind of stuff that, I mean, we have never seen this kind of stuff around here. Nothing like that. And so, that in numbers or in the type of sinkhole that developed here, we have never seen that. So, I saw a video not long ago about this young girl. She was walking in Japan, you know, and she was talking on her cell phone, and she stepped on the sidewalk on this particular area in the sidewalk, and she went straight down and disappeared. And this is the kind of thing that I think science fiction is made out of. And I mean, I don't think this has ever happened, but what you explained about the Earth expanding, I think that probably explained this whole thing pretty much, what's going on.
Yeah, because we've never seen this many sinkholes all over the planet in diverse places. I mean, we've had water leaks and rain and flood and stuff like that, and areas being eaten out, you know, in the sedimentary deposits underneath, you know, structures, but they always held together. They only collapse when the pressure holding them together, you know, the gravitational pressure squeezing the planet, when that relaxes as the planet expands, and the things that are weak already are going to fall. Now,
there is something going on with the plate, Stan, and I'm no expert at that. I really don't know much about it, but it seems like this tectonic plates, you know, the North American plates and the South American plates and the Central American plates and so forth. There seems to be something going on with the whole plate. And do you think, because part of one of the documents that John Verbatis sent is from this professor, this Russian professor. Let me see if I can get him. Can't remember his name. He came out with Dr. Elkin Kalilov. He's a geophysicist, and he came up with this theory that this was causing many of these sounds that a lot of people are hearing. And we know that there's some of those sounds that have been fabricated. You know, they have been debunked. But that still leaves many that are real. They're genuine. And
well, you know that there's a natural resonant frequency of around 7 to 8 cycles per second in the atmosphere of the Earth. And these large movements like you're talking about in the Earth, the acoustic gravity waves can form sounds that are almost self-reinforcing. That's why they kind of the real ones, kind of tend to sound like music as it decreases and increases as the things add together. There are waveforms all over the planet adding together to make that one net resonant frequency. So, I think that has something to do with it. And also we have whistlers at high frequency, in radio. We get those all the time when solar radiation hits the Van Allen belts, the upper ionosphere, and creates high-frequency squeals on short wave. But this is low frequency. When you can hear it with your ear, then there's something big afoot.
Well, I am a researcher. I like to do research. I'm not I can't explain things like you can in scientific terms, but I did a little research on that, Stan, and I know you're familiar with the the 10th planet, the destroyer, Planet X. It has many names. The last time it's supposed to have come, according to historians and so forth, was around the time of the Exodus. And I got a copy of the Colburn, and I've been doing a lot of reading there, and of course, for Christians, that don't believe in anything but the Bible, of course, they won't give much credit to it. But if you look at it just as a research document, a book that basically contains historical data from the Egyptian manuscripts and so forth, it is very interesting what it has to say about some of these things. And one of the things I found out, Stan, was that they reported back in that time, in those days, of hearing sounds. For example, I'm going to read just one piece here, Man 6:16. It says, "The earth turned over as clay spun upon a potter's wheel, and the whole land was filled with uproar from the thunder of the destroyer, overheard, and the cry of the people. And there was the sound of moaning and lamentation on every side." So they heard those sounds. In another part, it says that they heard, for example, chapter 6, verse 5. He says, "The days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without a herdsman, as asses when lions prowl without their fold." And there are others that they talk about sounds and trumpets and that type of thing happening, them hearing it. They talk about spirals appearing in the heavens. That is in Man, chapter 5, verse 1. It says that the doom shape, they call it the doom shape, called the destroyer in Egypt, was seen in all the lands thereabouts. In color, it was bright and fiery. In appearance, it was changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling into a pool into an underground supply, and all men agree it was a most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a loosened star, being more like a fiery body of flame. And so I read that and I said, wait a minute, this sure sounds a lot like that Norway spiral and some of these other spirals that have been seen in the last couple of years. So could this be, I guess my question would be, Stan, could this be what we are seeing, what we are hearing, like the sounds, the spirals we're seeing, the earth cracking up? Could this be then maybe some of the effects that maybe something like this is actually out there? We can't see it, but maybe it's causing all this mess.
It's the causes of it could be local, because a mass like Nibiru or Planet X, for it to magnetically or gravitationally bother Earth, it would have to be a lot closer. We'd have to see it like, almost as close as the moon to have heavy tides and things, but that's under standard physics. The sun itself is unstable at the moment, and its magnetic field is about to flip. It does that every 22 years for a full cycle, every 11 years for a half cycle. But our magnetic field is weakening. So we are more influenced at this point, magnetically, by the change in the sun's magnetic poles. They're flip-flopping. Now, in recorded history, we've not had a magnetic field near Earth so weak that it could be affected by the flip-flop of the solar magnetic field, which reaches out into the solar system a great deal. Now, that could cause us to flip or to become unstable and cause our axis to wobble. Now, going back to Nibiru, or Planet X, even Velikovsky's reports in the Egyptian records tells of one pharaoh who complained and had his scribes write down, when will the earth stop groaning and moaning? And he was probably talking about the same thing that the Colburn Bible was mentioning.
Right.
It was a time of the earth expanding at that time. Now, whether it was due to an object coming close, anybody's guess at this point, but I've tried to be as open-minded as I can about that Planet X and Nibiru being the same thing. And there is something in our solar system, it's a matter of public record for many decades, that some mass is squashing the orbits of Neptune and Uranus, the outer planets, and they aren't at their full orbit. So there is a large mass whose orbit is conflicting with theirs. Now, it's not spinning around the sun, orbiting around, like normal planets, which are down in kind of the equatorial plane of the spin of the sun. It's called the ecliptic plane. They're not. This object in there, we'd see it. And we'd also see it if it were an object that was reflecting starlight from the sun. So it's dark. Now, it could be a dwarf star. It could be a planet made from charcoal dust. I mean, it's something that's not reflecting light if it's there. And there is something perturbing those planets. So I calculated, I developed a formula for the solar system to see where planets can orbit in a stable orbit, where they can park, in essence, as they orbit the sun. And there are some orbits between the sun and Jupiter that are not filled. They're empty, and they could take a planet or, small moon could orbit in there, whatever, but there's nothing there. What I did find, which surprised the heck out of me, was at 238 times the distance that Earth is from the sun, there is an orbit that's unfilled, or at least we haven't found anything there, and its orbital time is 3,600 years, plus or minus about 10 years.
That is interesting.
Now, if there's something that would normally occupy that stable orbit in a circular thing, but it's tilted up in a high orbit, way above the equatorial plane of the sun, it's on high inclination, we might not see it until it gets right on top of us. Now, I calculated as best I could with, the variables are kind of iffy, but I calculated how long it would take once we got it down into, say, Mars-Earth orbit above us and coming in toward the sun, how long would it take it to go down around the sun and whip back out? Now, remember, it takes 3,600 years for it to make the outer part of its orbit and come back. But down inside the inner planets, it's only about 10 to 11 years maximum, maybe even faster. So it'll come and go. And if that's the case, we should be seeing it now, and possibly it's coming up from the southern side of the ecliptic plane, so only people in Australia with scopes, maybe infrared scopes or whatever, could detect it if it's there. So that's, I'm still kind of, the judge is out on this. Something like that is obviously affecting the orbits of Neptune and Uranus, which does cause instabilities on the surface of those planets. Yet you can't see it close to them.
That's right.
We figured out why, because the actual orbit, these stable orbits, are ripples in what we call the fine structure, or they're now calling it dark matter, but it's the fluid of space that spins to form all the planets, stars, galaxies, and everything we can see. So those can have ripples that are invisible to us that go down and impede other orbits of planets. Don't even have to be close to the planet to do that. And that appears to be what's happening.
Yeah, there's definitely something agitating the sun. I mean, it's getting to the point where, and I don't know. I know Larry has told me about it, but recently I went out. I had to do some chores in the city, and it was I think it was around 12 or 1 o'clock, and I actually could not expose my skin to the sun. I couldn't do it, not even for a minute. And even through my shirt, it was coming through my shirt, and it was burning my skin through my shirt. So I have never experienced that. I have been driving, doing ministry since way back in 1985. I traveled to a lot of states in the country, and I mean at every time of the day, and morning, afternoon, and I mean even night. And I have never ever experienced the sun like this, and this has got. I mean, there's got to be something agitating the sun, and I think that's what you're saying, Stan, right? That this, whatever it is causing the sun to react, and then in turn the sun is maybe causing a lot of this mess in the weather here on Earth.
Well, it could well be. I mean, it's no secret either that large comets, we had one here just a few years ago that came in and almost hit the sun. It was a sun grazer and went around it, but when it did, after it got away from the sun, just as it was leaving, the sun started erupting with flares and coronal mass ejections and going crazy because of the disturbance of that very fragile bubble of superheated plasma that surrounds the sun. So, yeah, something like that could do it.
The thing that concerns me, Stan, and I know it concerns you, and I mean a lot of people, is if the way the sun is acting up, this could really begin to take a toll on our magnetosphere, because our magnetosphere is no secret that it is weakening, and it's got a big gaping hole on the north over the North Pole, I think it is now, and if this thing collapses, then there's no telling what's going to happen to us. I mean, maybe all those prophecies and visions that many people have had, many seers, and the Mayans have had, and the Hopi have had, and about fire burning the earth, and it's in the Bible too, where the earth will, the heavens will melt with fervent heat. That could be fulfilled literally. Don't you think, Stan? I mean, that is very possible if this thing happens like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The sun, since 1992, has been emitting new frequencies that we had never seen before, and they're in the ultraviolet range, which most of the emissions are in some band or other. Now, I was down in Australia a few years back, where I was living there in Perth, and we had the ozone hole appear over Perth. And that's where the ozone layer thins and lets the sunlight come straight in. And I know exactly what you're talking about feeling the pain from the sun, because it was going through blue jeans, blue jean shirts and blue jeans themselves. It felt like pinpricks all over your skin, and it was hot. Mm. And they were advising housewives who were hanging the washing out in the lines that when you hang out your white linens, to wear sunglasses to keep from damaging your eyes from the ultraviolet increase. Now, when we lose the magnetic field, the magnetosphere collapses, and it will do that as it goes through the 0 point and flips to north to south and that kind of stuff. When we lose that magnetopause, then we're going to see a bombardment of the planet with all sorts of frequencies, ultraviolet, gamma rays, all sorts of stuff that we were protected from before because they were trapped in the Van Allen belts and in the ionosphere itself, where it made ozone from the oxygen by striking it. So we're going to be exposed to things that you want to hide in caves and out of the sun until it goes away. You really will not want to be outside. And that's, even if the sun goes dark, which it may well do, compared to what it is now, there may be massive coronal holes open up, and the sun will appear to be darkened, like super sunspots all over it. Like the Bible says, if you were looking at the sun in the daylight normally through like a cloth made of hair, or like a woven a big weave cloth of some sort, you'd see pinholes of light surrounded by the darkness of the threads, okay? So if you look at the sun that way, then what would happen is those dark spots would increase and amalgamate, and there would be pinholes of visible light, and then in the dark areas there would be infrared perhaps and frequencies we can't see but you can feel, and it would make it would go toward the red spectrum and make the moonlight red. And if you look at in the Revelation of John, you'll see that the sun darkening and the moon going red occur at the same time. And this would explain it. But it also means that if you're outside, when the energy from the sun is that hot, and even though it's invisible, it will fry you. It's like an invisible heat lamp, if you wish, and it will cook grass. It'll cook fish on the surface of the waters, and trees will burn, all that are facing the sun at that time.
Mm.
So yes, I think what you're saying is quite feasible. It's a long
Hey,
way
Stan.
Yeah.
Stan, you remember, I had that friend in the Canary Islands, and they were having that mysterious unknown disease that was making everybody sick, and the sun was working on their skin, and you actually solved that. Tell Augusto about that.
Well, Larry had me talk to his friend out there. It was in the northeastern set of islands off the coast of, I think it's Brazil, anyway, or northeastern part of South America. And they were complaining that school children were being taken out of school because they were nauseous, they were disoriented, and they were getting rashes. And adults were getting nauseous as well out in the sun. They could feel this pinpricks in their skin. And so I tried to figure out what was happening and realized that there was a hole in the upper atmosphere, which is called the South Atlantic Anomaly. And even NASA won't fly astronauts through that area because of the radiation that leaks through from the sun. It's lethal. So that hole had apparently drifted over toward South America more, and it opened up so that they were getting just the barest edge of it, not the center where it was really hot over the ocean. And so with that much reaction to it, and with people being disoriented, imagine what would happen if the whole planet suddenly lost all that shielding. It's like Star Trek, shields are down. What do we do?
Yeah, I mean,
Stan, here at the house, here in Oklahoma, we've, the last year, I guess, especially the last months, we've been running like 10 or 11 on our UV. I watch that every day pretty much. And, I remember before you ever left Australia, you were telling people about the UV and a lot of the changes with the sun way back then, actually. But even my plants, I can tell that every day the sun just literally takes them and I'm supposing the radiation that's, being put up on them and at the same time, the stress sun is just taking them out. I just don't have good plants anymore. And I remember how Holly had said that sooner or later people are probably going to have to begin to raise things indoors.
Well, everyone is complaining over here in Colorado this season, like their tomatoes, and ours too, were small. Even the beefsteak tomatoes were only about 1.5 inches in diameter. They just didn't get up to full size. The watermelons are small. Some of our cherry trees and peach trees, they bloomed early and blossomed early and gave us fruit early, and now that we're seeing apple trees and other types of plum trees that are dragging way behind what they should be for this time of year. So something has really changed in the climate. It's not just a storm. It's something serious.
Well, right outside my house, I have a tree here, and I'm looking at it right now, okay? Now, It has been raining here almost every day, and of course, we had almost 30 inches from Debbie, and yet I'm looking at this tree, and it has a lot of its leaves are like burnt. They're like dark brown. It's like somebody has taken like a heat source and just wither them. And so this has got to be caused by the sun. I don't see anything else that's causing this because they get plenty of water now. There's no reason for these trees to be withering like that.
No, I agree. We're seeing the same kind of leaf curl as well. And even on our tomato plants right now, half of them are brown and crispy, and then parts of the same plant are green and producing fruit. And it's part probably that's in the shade of one of the apple trees nearby that's surviving. But there are probably new frequencies coming, even more than what I knew about, that are causing the damage to the plants. And if you have no plants due to flooding or drought or fire, then your herds diminish because you can't feed them as much. We've even seen farmers here selling off part of their herd because they can't feed them, can't get enough hay. Now,
if this heat source from the sun, if whatever rays are coming through are doing this to plants, Stan, I mean, what could it be doing to us? That is the question I just keep thinking about. What is this thing doing to us? I mean, it's got to be doing something to us that we don't even know what it is.
I know. It'd probably be a time to cover up and not expose yourself for long periods of time to the sun. I know the sun worshippers probably won't like that much, but it might be a clever time.
I'm telling you.
Stan, let me ask you something too. You were talking, y'all were talking about the sinkholes. You know, I've talked to you before about the situation up here where I live in Oklahoma, eastern portion, and Oklahoma, and the western portion of Arkansas, and how that the water drillers up are continually hitting cavities with nothing in them. I mean, no water. You know, they're cavities. They don't know what they are, how big they are, but it's beginning to be everywhere they're trying. And, you know, I know that the aquifers apparently are all in trouble, even the ones up, you know, by you. But is by chance the catching of the planet, is this also maybe pulling and opening up open spaces and then draining some of these aquifer areas?
Oh, I think so. If you recall, over in Louisiana and off the coast over there are a lot of salt domes. They call them salt diapirs. But those salt domes, they're starting to collapse over there, and one of them has collapsed just extremely close to where the U.S. government has been pumping in natural gas to store it in a salt bottle, in essence, under the surface of the earth. And there's great that bottle will rupture, and as a result, that we'll see a huge explosion of gas there, natural gas, in the middle of Louisiana. Now, those salt piers, if you remember Plato's writing on the Critias and Timaeus debates about Atlantis and how it was destroyed, part of how he described the central area of Atlantis was a tall mountain that rose up from the sea. And in that area, say in the Persian Gulf, for instance, there are a lot of salt diapier domes there that form, they're well up. They well up through the oil formations, and they form this, you know, beautiful hump. And on the top of that's where the what do you call it, the castle, the kings of Atlantis lived in their palace. And when Atlantis was destroyed, I'm pretty sure what happened was the earth stretched and the diapier collapsed and sank beneath the water. It did the rest of Atlantis around it. Now, whether it was due to just that or due to the Santorini volcano, I don't know. But stretching will weaken those structures, and if we're getting sinkholes all over the place and we've got salt diapiers with natural gas we pumped into it, etc., or even radioactive waste, some, you know, like Texas Instruments used to pump radioactive waste and toxic chemical waste into deep salt wells over in that area. And if those break open, they're going to hit what water table is left and pollute the air and cause widespread fires. So it's a very serious situation developing.
Do you think then that maybe from this, when our magnetosphere collapses and all these cosmic rays and waves and whatever else is going to be, the Earth is going to be exposed to, because it's going to be exposed to everything, that might be some of the things that contaminate, I guess, the water supplies and even the crops and the food, whatever it comes in contact with these things, because when we read the Bible, it talks about, of course, a great famine, which is already beginning with the droughts and the fires and the floods, and it's really decimating the bread baskets of the world. So it's already beginning, but it's going to intensify, and I mean, there's no telling what these things will be doing to our resources. Dan, I'm really concerned about some of these things, but yet when we look at the governments and these people, they don't seem to be concerned whatsoever.
Well, possibly. I try to play the game of, if I were in charge, if they'd appoint me in charge of the government and I knew this was happening, what would I do? And when I play that game, I realize that knowing how people react badly to threats and crises, I just had to look down in Florida there, where you are, at the people before a hurricane comes, especially the newbies to the state that have never been through a hurricane, they all race to the grocery stores, race to the gas stations, and get everything they can. I mean, they even buy, Brussels sprouts in cans, which nobody ever eats. But anyway, they clean the shelves off everything in a panic.
Yep.
And, if it were an extended threat all over, not just the United States, but all over the world, people would start to form gangs and take and loot what they wanted. Anarchy would set in. We don't have enough military or policemen or whatever to calm that kind of a riot. So I would say to myself, maybe I will tell them kind of indirectly, unofficially, so through leaks, through people that do blog talk radio or something like that, so that the people who are listening and aware will know what to do without panicking the rest of the people and tearing down civilization before the event happens, if it does happen. So you see what I'm saying?
Right.
And how many, of the people, Larry, you know what I'm talking about, say, look, a deep throat source that's told me this, an official source, okay, can't name him. Well, of course not. But you see, the warning is going out, and I really do suspect, not Obama, but people that really do care about people, have been leaking this information even before Obama got into office and trying to get people to get prepared and do what they can. And I'm sure that, as I would do too with the government, that I would find a way to preserve continuity of government, to have an underground bunker or whatever with supplies so that we'd have some form of order that we could reestablish after the disaster passes. So, I think you're right, Augusto, that they're not telling us everything, but then again, sometimes not knowing everything is probably in your benefit.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Knowing human nature, people panic and, they... I was reading this here, and that I like to share because it confirms what you just said, Stan. This is again from the Colburn, the chapter of Men, 6, verse 7, and it talks about what happened in Egypt, okay, when this event was going on. He says, the dead were no longer sacred and were thrown into the waters. Those already entombed were neglected, and many became exposed, many of the dead. They lay unprotected against the hands of thieves. He who once toiled in the sun, bearing the yoke himself, now possessed oxen. These are the thieves. He who grew no grain now owned a storehouse full. He who once dwelt at ease among his children now thirsted for water. He who once sat in the sun with crumbs and dregs was now bloated with food. He reclined in the shade, his bowls overflowing. Then in verse 9 he says, the public records were cast off and destroyed. No man knew who were the slaves and who were the masters.
Oh, wow.
And the people cried out to Pharaoh in their distress, but he stopped his ears and acted like a deaf man. We're talking about that they don't pay attention. This is exactly what happened back then. Chaos was breaking loose. The people were just, terrified, and the thieves and the gangs and all these people were just, looting and stealing.
Yeah. That's what we're going to see. Hey, Stan, let me ask you something. I know that a few in the chat room may want to start asking some questions in just a little bit, but I want to give you time to, it's intriguing. Maybe it's just to me, but I'm intrigued with, since I had that experience, that dream of the arrival, and of course you've had, you put up a few things that you've had experiences about a deceptive arrival that's coming, and also, if you want to just chat about that and just explain to people what that entails, I wanted to ask you, years ago, Stan, we had talked momentarily about experiments in time that you were aware of, and I think you even observed one, but you don't have to describe anything you don't want to, but where do you think time experiments really are at the present time? I know things are usually 50 years ahead of where you're thinking or more, but do you have any concept of the experiments that's been going on with movement in time, forward or backwards?
Well, Larry, we all move forward in time. It's just how fast we move. Going back in time, I think, would would then equate you to the creator and sustainer of the universe, to God.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were God and could look at time as a continuous loop or circle or a straight line, but there was the past behind me and the future ahead of me, I could look and go into any point in that timeline I want to. I could go into the past and alter some things that occurred back there so that other things would or would not occur in the future of that timeline. But I'm outside that timeline. I'm like a projectionist with a slide carousel. I'm taking slides out here, moving them back there, replacing with that, which changes the result down the line of what you see. Now, having said that, there are experiments that are being done and publicly discussed where they have been able to achieve speeds faster than the speed of light, so that a particle will arrive before it should. And they're saying this tachyon particle may be a way that they can time travel. And what I say is this: I am reasonably certain that the fallen ones from the time of the Garden of Eden and before, who are still, in some sort of a body in the universe here, like the parallel universe, the layers of heaven, the levels of heaven, they are here and coming back to us. They're being cast back to earth with Satan. Now, when they were cast back, or those that were here even, if they had electrogravitic saucer craft, rod crafts, whatever you want to call them, but those super-duper flying things we call UFOs, when they use anti-gravity, they can adjust the energy inside the ship and in their body so that everything in there ages very slowly. And they can go forward in time thousands of years and only age a few minutes or an hour or a few days. That means they can do something really spectacular. They could have recorded the crucifixion. They could have recorded all kinds of things back there and bring it forward with them into our time and only have aged, like I say, a few days, weeks, months, whatever. And here they have videotape of the crucifixion to prove the authenticity of Satan and his boy here, the Antichrist. These kind of things are quite possible. Forward time travel is possible. It's permitted, I'm sure, within in the good Lord's plan of things. But nothing can go back and alter time except what the good Lord allows.
It's almost like pretty much everybody's locked out. The good Lord has everybody locked out of going back in time. Once you pass that certain, it's like the book continually says, we live in the now, today. We're aware of the past, and, we know there's a future, but it's always today, according to our ability. And, of course, we're locked in a physical body in this time-space that is a little more difficult.
Larry, I think I talked to you about this once years ago when we were discussing this. When I was down in Australia, there was a university professor at a party, and he was saying to me, he says, it's impossible to have time travel. It's possible to have God, and I don't believe God exists, he said. And I said, well, okay, so God doesn't exist. I said to him, Professor, did you ever watch that show on the BBC, the time guy, the Time Lord, Doctor Who? And he says, oh yeah, that's quite a novel show. I mean, he did the impossible. He traveled in time back and forth. And I said, well, do you think that in the future, look how much man has progressed in the last century. I said, do you think sometime in the future that mankind will be able to conquer time and go back in time? Oh, well, yeah, I think that's possible. That's possible. And I said, well, the first man that takes a time cabinet or whatever it is and goes back in time, from that moment on, there always was a God, because he'll control it so no one else gets out there to mess up his timeline. And he blinked at me and went over to have a drink.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, this topic of time. I've been given that a lot of thought, because when I read the Bible, I see there it talks about glorified bodies, and that we're going to be like the Lord, like Yeshua, for we shall be like him. We're going to see him as he is, and we're going to be moving about at the speed of light, by thought, basically. And we are not going to be restricted to this, timeline, to this third dimension. And now I really want to touch on something here, which is kind of maybe a little way out there, but you know, I'm not into New Age or anything like that. But most people heard back in the 70s. I think it was in the 70s when that song came out, the Age of Aquarius. It was called The Fifth Dimension, and I liked that song a lot. I didn't understand what they were saying, but I have come to understand now what they were talking about. And basically was that with the coming of this new age, which they're referring to with the passing of the old age, the coming of the new age, humanity was going to be ushered into a fifth dimension or a higher dimension, where, you know, they believe, their new age doctrines believe, you know, that there's going to come a molecular change, a DNA change, a transformation, if you will, in mankind's DNA to be able to ascend to that higher dimension. And when I've read that and I thought about it, I said, wait a minute, you know, this may be New Age doctrine, but this is exactly what the Bible talks about that we as Christians are going to experience. We, you know, when the harpazo takes place, when He transforms us, when we are manifested as the sons of God, and we become like Him, and you know, we are leaving this third dimension and going into another dimension. We are going to leave these earthly suits, these earthly bodies, and we are going to be transformed, literally transformed, into energy, pure energy. What kind of energy, I don't know, but the Bible talks about a quickening. It talks about, He calls it, I think it's like a quickening, like a transformation. And He said, if the Spirit that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwells within us, He that raised up Yeshua from the dead shall also quicken our mortal bodies by the Spirit that dwells within us. Okay, so I'm sharing that because I had a very interesting experience earlier in the year where the Lord spoke to me in the middle of a night and basically told me something that, you know, it was really a puzzle at first, but I've been thinking about it, praying about it, and He's been giving me understanding. The words He used was the inner man, or the inner energy, or what we have inside, the Spirit within us, okay? The glory within us is going to be released on a specific time, at a specific moment. It's going to be released, and that's all He said, but the more I thought about it was, this release, this quickening of our spirit is going to cause the transformation. And as you were talking, Stan and Larry, you know, I was thinking about that. Could this be related to all this that you were talking, Stan? I mean, the dimensions and being able to move maybe forward or maybe through dimensions once we are in that glorified bodies, like the Lord, you know, spoke.
Think about this, Augusto. The good Lord says He sets His angels to watch over His people, those who are on board with Him, who are saved, so they won't even stumble. That these angels, these messengers, are around the believers until they go to the rest and wait for the rapture. Now, that means that they can see us. We can't see them, but they can see through the veil that separates our world, our universe, from theirs. And it's like levels, at least 3 levels, and in some of the Jewish mystical writings, they talk about 7 levels to heaven. But it's like our physicists are now saying, in that they think that there are parallel or concentric universes around each other. And they just can't touch each other because their frequencies are different. Now, when it says that we're going to be, those that are dead will be raised first, and then those who are yet alive will be caught up into the clouds, it's actually caught up inside clouds, like a white cloud, if you look at the Greek translation. And our bodies will be light, like colored, like bright light and sparkly. And when they're caught up like that, they leave the body behind. The corruptible must put on the incorruptible. So I think our bodies that we have here will just drop down. And, you know, the people that are in charge of the planet at that time under Satan's man will probably say, biowarfare, genetic warfare, strange things. Their vibes weren't the right level, and they're not going into the new dimension that we're going into. So their souls are, have to go back and live through other incarnations
right.
on other planets and junk like that. And that's the kind of stuff you hear from these people.
Yeah, they're under the delusion, I guess, that they're going to be taken, into this other dimension by the spaceships, the extraterrestrials, and what have you. But like I said before, I don't think that Yeshua is going to come back in a spacecraft like that, in a UFO. I don't think that is how he's going to come back.
No,
Praise God.
No, in Matthew, he says, look, if someone comes to you saying the Messiah is here in the desert or in this secret place, don't go there, because it'll be a lie. Because when
Amen.
Everything on the planet will see me when I arrive. You won't have to go to some secret location. And his technology is bigger and better, and that's it. He's told us what to look for as the lightning comes from the east to the west. It's going to be bright.
Now, in reference to that, Stan, and Larry, and you and I have talked, Larry, about it some, but I want to share this with Stan, because I want his side of it, his input.
Sure.
We're entering into what the scientists call a photon cloud, okay, or a photonic cloud. Mm-hmm. I have done little study on it. I don't understand it all, but the little I have grasped from what they're saying is that it's already beginning. The process has already begun. We're going to be in it for a long, long time. That we're going to be bombarded. Planet Earth is going to be bombarded by these photons, which we have never experienced anything like that, and it's going to cause some strange changes in our physical bodies, maybe on the Earth too. It's going to cause some changes on the Earth, and I have been thinking about that a lot, because that sounds, again, a lot like what may be happening during this quickening, during this rapture, the harpazo, where the believers in Yeshua are going to be transformed. Now, the New Agers think that it is going to be them that are going to, go to another dimension, but I say that it's going to be those that are full of Him, full of His light, and have believed in Yeshua, have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. It is us that are going to go through that other dimension with Him. What do you say to that, Stan?
I agree. What I was talking about was that they've already started the New Age movement to prepare their people for this, saying, okay, we're going to put you into something. Well, if you've watched Star Trek, they say it's like a holodeck, where it's we're going to project your home and your surroundings just like you've got now, but it'll be the new dimension, and it'll be solid to you, and people will believe it that don't know any better. People that are following the New Age movement really don't know any better anyway, but that will definitely cap that. They will be fooled, and we will be gone. We'll leave our bodies, and we leave them behind in the dimension that's here now with those people, and they will believe a lie, because to believe otherwise would be too painful.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Praise God. I mean, this thing is happening, and this is what I try to tell the people. I said, this thing is happening even as we speak, and we don't know what's going to be. We don't know what's going to transpire, but there's going to be a lot of bad things about to happen, many bad negative things, but there's going to be some really neat stuff happening in our near future. Amen. Praise God.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah, one of the things that I like is Isaiah 60, where, and I know, Augusto, you've had a number of, dreams and experiences the Lord showed you about this coming darkness, this thick darkness, the ubiquitous darkness. And Isaiah 60, though, as close as I've read that, appears that the same time that this great darkness is really coming down, that's the same time simultaneously when the light of God rises in His people. It's the same thing. Depends on who you are and where you're at in Him.
Well, that's exactly what the Lord showed me, Larry. When I had that experience at the beginning of the year, when he woke me up in the middle of the night and told me the internal glory will be revealed. He said at midnight, at 12 midnight, and he repeated that 3 times. And so I did look darkness up, and the darkest time of the night, I read that it was at 12 midnight. And of course, in the Bible, we read there where many times it refers to the midnight in the parable of the 10 virgins, when it says that at midnight, at 12 midnight, they heard a voice, a cry saying, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh." And so we know that is when the Lord returns, at midnight, at the darkest time of the night and at the darkest time of the earth. Also, I believe it has something to do with this ubiquitous darkness. I had this other thing that I heard a couple of years ago, ubiquitous, that this darkness was ubiquitous. And that was, I think it was a couple of years ago, when I had a visit from 2 messengers from the Lord. And basically, the message that they had was twofold. And I've shared this in another broadcast, but I don't think I've shared this with Stan and in this program before. So I'm just going to share real brief so that people know what I'm talking about. Basically, what this messenger of the Lord said was that there was a great darkness that was coming upon the earth. He said it 3 times. There's great darkness coming upon the earth. And he paused for a moment, and then he looked at me and continued. And the second thing he said was this. He said, there is a lot of activity taking place in heaven right now. And he repeated the same exact thing again 3 times. And then I woke up, and I was startled. I mean, I knew that I had a visitation from a messenger of the Lord, and I didn't understand at first about the darkness and about the preparations in heaven. A lot of activity. But the more I prayed about it, the Lord started sorting this out. Later in the year, that same year, I had a second experience where I was looking out the window, and the sun was out, everything was normal, the trees were just, moving with the breeze, and suddenly everything started getting dark. Slowly, darker, and darker, and until it was pitch black. At first, the thought that occurred to me was, this is a solar eclipse, We are experiencing a solar eclipse, but that didn't sound right because every light disappeared. There was no moon, there was no star, there was no light of any sort, no car lights, no lights in any home. It was pitch black. It was almost like this darkness had a substance. It was almost like a membrane, a darkness. And then while I was watching this, I heard the word ubiquitous darkness. And I believe, and then I did some research in this same book that I was reading from before, the Colbrain. Okay, and there is a chapter there, chapter 6, where he talks about darkness, and he talks about how this strange darkness came upon the people. And of course, we also read that in the book of Exodus. When the 3 days of darkness came upon the land of Egypt and killed all the firstborn. And so we know that was the last time this object passed by, and it brought destruction upon the kingdom of Egypt and upon the Egyptians, and but yet the people of the Lord, the Israelites in Goshen, they were protected. And so I associated that with this, and also with with the spiritual darkness that is going to be taking place. But I don't know if this is the way it's going to happen now. But we do read about the darkness again in the Bible, that it is going to be, we're going to be ushered into some type of darkness. And so there seems to be a consistency here about this darkness and the approach of this object, and something that happens in the spiritual realm. For some reason, it's almost like a membrane is ripped. The membrane that separates if I can call it the dimensions.
Could that be like a veil, Augusto?
It's like a veil, yeah. Ripped. And so I mean, I would like to hear what maybe from Stan's side. I mean, if how could this happen? In the actual, if this is possible, even in the physical reality that we live in. Is anything like that possible, Stan?
Well, yeah. There are a number of things I can think of. The whole solar system is, as you mentioned, about to pass through the equatorial plane of our galaxy. And in that plane, as in many other things that have tremendous gravity and spin, there are particles, and light is a photon, okay, but there's extreme density of light of all kinds of frequencies that bends out through the equator of galaxies and curls around and gets back into the poles of the spinning galaxy eventually. So we're going to go through that. We get photon bombardment all the time. We get it from our sun, and we get it from nearby galaxies and places that emit gamma rays and other frequencies. Any electromagnetic radiation that's what we call light or just EM radiation has a structure we call a photon in physics. Now, I think what they're saying is that when we pass through the equatorial plane of the galaxy, that the intensity, the denseness of the light at various frequencies that moves through that plane will be so different that it will cause us trouble in our solar system. There's also the fact that there's dust clouds, and we don't just orbit around our sun and our planets don't just orbit around the center of the galaxy in a nice circle. We ride the waves. We go up and down as we go around, and it's kind of following ripples or shock waves in that. So we could be very well passing through a very dense cloud of dust or material like that, which would cause the darkness. The sun could go, as I mentioned before, having super sunspot activity and coronal holes, which make its temperature drop, and it suddenly goes dark. I don't know in your vision whether it accounted for flashlights and car lights, because if they don't work, I don't know what's happening. But
they didn't work.
You saw cars that didn't work?
No, there was no light. There was a complete absence of light. No car lights, no lights in the homes, no stars. I didn't see any stars, no moon, nothing. It was like total absence of light.
Well, it could be something pretty unique in passing through that dense band of photons coming from the center of the galaxy that neutralizes light for a short period of time. Maybe light can't function in that portion of space. I mean, at the center of every galaxy now, we've just only recently found out that every galaxy has a supermassive black hole in it. So that might be something affiliated with the way the black hole exchanges energy, and a black hole will suck light right out of the heavens. I mean, it bends light so that it doesn't get to where it's supposed to go. It may be something allied to that. I can only conjecture at this point because I just don't have enough data to tell you for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is something that we don't experience often. I mean, but the thing that really, when I look at it and I see it, it's like every time this object, whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I have heard many refer to it that it could be a black hole, it could be a carbon star, or dwarf star, or whatever. But whatever it is and it's made out of, it does seem to cause these things to happen. All these same effects that we're seeing, and the darkness. The darkness hasn't happened yet, but from this message that the messenger that showed me, of the Lord showed me, it is coming. That probably will be upon us sometime in the next few years. I don't know when, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be another even 10 years or 20 years. I think it's going to be close, because I saw it when the Lord shows me something twice, and in such a strong way, I know it's not that far away. It's not 100 years away or anything like that. It is much closer than that. But I just thought it was fascinating, that this darkness, it always makes its way to our galaxy every time that this type of event is happening.
Well, Augusto and Stan, maybe you can answer this, Stan. When I was reading about Moses and the time in Egypt and all, and that great darkness that came, there was I had a Bible that had a commentary in it, but the commentary indicated that though it's not in the King James Bible, that the sages at that time wrote that the darkness was so thick and strong that it could literally be felt. I mean, in other words, it almost had substance to it. Do you remember anything like that?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I felt. That's exactly what I thought. That this thing, it was thick. Yeah, go ahead, Stan.
Go on. Well, it's funny you should mention that, Larry. I don't remember reading about that, but when I had my out-of-body experience and nearly died, when I left my body, I went through a smooth, almost silky feeling darkness that I could feel it flowing through my body like I was made of screen wire or something. But it was, I was traveling out to the light through this medium, and it felt just like you're talking about there. So that's, I guess what I was doing was transitioning from our universe or dimension into the Lord's area, and there was that darkness. But it was not frightening or anything. It was just smooth. That's all I could say, and you could feel it. You were flying through it. Weird, eh?
Well, yeah, that is weird. Because when we start talking about darkness, we start talking about the ambience of the enemy. His darkness. In the Bible says that darkness prevailed not against the light. So we know that every time we read about the darkness or anything like that, we know it's coming from where. And so there have been people, Stan, I have also heard that they have explained the same thing you just did, that when they see that light, in their out of the body experience, and they go towards it, they go through this darkness too, that like some type of a tunnel, very dark tunnel and then they as they approach the light, it dissipates, which is very interesting.
Yes, it is. And I draw that parallel. I don't know whether it'll be the same darkness that envelops the earth at that time, but if what you're saying about transitioning from one universe to the other, then maybe that darkness will be seen by the people left on earth as we transition over to the other side.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you think that maybe this darkness is in fact what is going to, when this happens, might be one of the signs that the transition is about to take place?
I wonder if it is. I think it could be, and I don't want to forget the dead rising first. Are we going to see it like the people of Jerusalem did after the resurrection of Yeshua? Are we going to see people that we knew rise up and then, disappear in the clouds, or what? I mean, will that be a sign if we see dead people walking? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, that has to happen first. That is very clear in the scripture. And I think it's probably going to happen during one of these feasts, the probably trumpets, and also the other feasts that come after the tabernacles. I think we're about to see some incredible things in this next season, that we're going to see the fall feasts of Yeshua, of the Lord.
Right.
But what you said there was very fascinating, Stan, because that's exactly what the Lord told me in this message. He said at 12 midnight, in this darkness, the inner glory is going to be revealed. So the darkness has to come first before the inner glory is revealed.
Let
That's
me
what
say
told
something
me.
else. You talk about it being the darkest time of the night, midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read Zola Levitt's book, An Israeli Love Story?
No, I don't think I have.
It's a little paperback, and it's fiction, but he wrote it about the rapture and the similarities between the rapture and the betrothal and marriage in traditional Hebrew fashion. Even in the finding of a bride for Isaac, Abraham sent his own servants to the bordering country, it wasn't his country, to find a bride and bring her back to Isaac, and it was like a prototype of the rapture. Now,
that's right.
In the story, they tell about the betrothal. The young man sees a woman that he wants to marry, so he approaches her father and says, "Look, I'd like to marry your daughter." And they share a bottle of red wine. They each of them sits on their hand under their thigh, and they shake on it and make a contract that, okay, between this date and 1 year from now, sometime at your choosing, your father's choosing, when you've built the home for my daughter to be your wife, then you can come and steal the bride and and marry her. So they make the contract, and so the girl thinks, oh boy, I'm getting married. Could be tomorrow, could be the next day, but at the worst, it'll be a year. And so every night, she and her bridesmaids wait and light candles or oil lamps in their upstairs room and watch for the approach of the groom. At midnight, they can go to sleep, but they wait up until the last hour, midnight, before they go to sleep. Now, when he does come, he comes at midnight. He does not enter into her home, which would be like the earth. He has his friends go in and steal her away. Now,
wow.
in tradition, the mother and father of the bride are not supposed to see who steals it, but obviously they did peek to be sure it wasn't some knothead stealing their daughter. It was the right people. And she would put a veil over her head, and so would the bridesmaids, and they would take them all out into the street into the night, and then they would take them off to meet with the groom at the place where they're going to have 7 days of feasting and partying. The bride would then be, at the beginning, to be taken into the bridal chamber with the groom, where they get to know each other and pass out the fact that they've consummated the marriage, and the party starts and goes for 7 days and nights, a great celebration. Now, when they were taking the bride out to meet at this place, they go through the cities in darkness, and everyone knows something is happening, but they don't know who's doing it or what's happening. It's like that darkness has shielded the bride as she leaves. So it may well be that what you're saying is what's going to happen.
My goodness, that just blew me away. That is a confirmation and a half of what I just was saying.
What really caught my attention was the fact that, the bride had to keep herself ready.
Right. Keep looking up. Keep looking out there until the midnight hour. You can go to sleep, but keep looking up and wait for him.
We do have a couple of questions, guys.
All right.
I hate to interrupt you because this is so intriguing. Okay, one question is that someone out in California on his garden plant, I think he said tomatoes, he has it looks almost like a silver paint over the leaves, and it's shiny. And he was wondering if you guys had any idea what that was or where it came from.
Anybody?
I have no idea. That's Stan's territory.
Well, it could very well be from metallic particles in the atmosphere over where we live. I don't know if chemtrails are common in his area, but if they are, it could be particulates of metal, very fine metal, falling out of the chemtrails onto his plants. If so, I would think maybe he'd be wearing a mask or staying indoors a lot so that he doesn't have to breathe the stuff, let it settle. It could also be some other factor like a disease, a fungus, but I've never heard of anything being shiny like metal like that. That does sound like a foreign particle. It'd be interesting to know if he sees that kind of reflective stuff in the soil itself or on the surface of the soil, or is it just on the leaves and not the stalk?
Yeah, that now that you mentioned, Stan, that does sound like chemtrail stuff, because I think they use like aluminum oxide and barium and some of these trace
barium.
metals.
Yeah, and so that would be my first guess. But I'd like for him to check the soil around there, and as to say the stalk of the plant, and look under a microscope and see if the hairs on it of the stalk are silvery or show the same deposit. The plant, the leaves, the stem, the fruit, and the dirt. See if any of them have traces of that same kind of reflectivity. I'm not asking you to do an AA5 analysis of it, but just see what you can see with a microscope.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Chemtrails, like the metal particles, and Lynn said that she's seen that in Idaho as well. And Daniel Holding wants to know from Stan what you think the ramifications are. I hope I get this right. The ramifications of Planet X or Nibiru, that big thing out there, passing through at the same time we go through the ecliptic plane.
Well, boy, that's a complex question. I don't know how to answer it. I don't have enough information to know. First of all, every planet in our system, our star system, is going to be affected when we go through that galactic equator, that equatorial plane. How, I'm not sure, but I do think that our orbits will all be stretched away from the center of the galaxy, outward as we pass through it, and then we'll shock back as we get on the other side, up above that, and make that kind of arcing movement over to the next time we go through. The galaxy is a big place. The star system we're in is bigger than a lot of people realize itself. If you were to go to the outer edge of what we can detect of our own solar system, just the outer edge, and travel in a straight line from there through the sun and out the other side until you reach the edge of our solar system on the other side of the sun. If you were to travel at the speed of light, that journey would take you a year. We're a big place, and we're only down here in a tiny little part that we're exploring and haven't even, the nearest star system is like 4 light years away from us, traveling at the speed of light 4 years away. And if we can go out to the edge of ours in half a light year, it's just next door neighbor. You just jump over there and we're touching each other. So all these things interact and touch, even though you can't see it. So Planet X, Nibiru, all of the rest of our planets we know about, our asteroid belts, the sun, all this is going to be shaken visibly, I think, when we go through that high energy center of the galactic plane. Just kind of an educated guess. Hope that answers you.
Hey, Stan, something interesting has came up, too. Let me ask you about, real quick, interjected here while you're talking about this. You're familiar with Harlick that does codes?
Sorry, with who?
Harlick, the 3 guys that work on a lot of those, Eliyahu, he's in Jerusalem, and then you've got Harlick.
The Torah. Are you talking about the Torah codes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, having studied with a couple of teaching rabbis on this subject, I can tell you that sometimes people read too much into the coding after the fact. You can find anything you want in there virtually, but there are codes. There are what we call skip codes in the Torah. But long before we had the computers, they were showing me how to count letters and find out that like the name of the book, like for Bereshit, Genesis, that you started out with the first letter was B, and then you counted 49 letters, which was the sum of the letters for the name of God, and you would find the next letter, which would be Reich, and you could count every 49th letter, then you would find that it was the next letter in that word. But to do what they're doing with the skip codes now, I'm not completely convinced that that's fair, the way they're doing it, because they're not always using the same skip amounts. They're varying it until they get something that their computer programs, oh, that's a word. Oh, were you looking for a word that said 9/11? Okay, here it is in Hebrew. And because they scramble the letters, there's so many of them when they scramble them to do that, I just feel that people are putting too much into that particular part of the Torah code, and they're missing the big picture. And that is what God told Moses. He said, Moshe, make the writing of the first, these books that you're doing, over the letters in Hebrew. On 7 of the letters, I want you to put little crowns or little feathers. Sometimes I want you to put 1 feather and then 2 feathers, and they're very fine things. In Hebrew, they're called the tagin crowns, or the tagin tagates. And these things hold, he told Moshe, he said, these little crowns hold a greater message than that which you read below in the Hebrew. And for you to see this message, you have to do as you do at sunset. When the sun is setting and you want to see the Zohar, the rays of the sunlight, don't look straight at the sun, but look at it indirectly and you will see. And so it's telling you, look at the tagin crowns indirectly. When I told one rabbi that we were talking about it, he said, oh, indirectly? You mean like looking at it in a mirror? So we have pursued from that point, and it's interesting, but it's not coming up with all these spectacular results that these people are writing books about.
Yeah, pretty interesting. What I was going to tell you was that Matthew Glazerson and Robert Harlick had run a short code on a Nibiru, and it did come back with a little bit of a different spelling. It was Nibaru, I believe it was, and it had a star. In other words, the word star with it, like I guess another sun, so to speak, and also had the Hebrew date of 2013, our 2013, I guess be 5773, I believe, wouldn't it, in Hebrew?
Yeah, 5773, yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was odd. Just a little short code that they did try to run on something called a Nibiru, and like you said, though, you can read a lot of things into it, but this is very simple. And but that was odd that it would come up with that date tied into something called a star, and had that name that was a little different spelling. Of course, you got to, you do it in the Hebrew anyway, and then have to translate that into our English. I found that was really interesting. It was just a little short code.
Larry, it's a debatable subject because you could take the, say, the dictionary, the English dictionary, and take every word out of it and throw it into the pages as sentences, or you could take a big book like Moby Dick, put the words in the computer, and then start running that skip program every 13th letter, every 20th letter, whatever, and look for anything that spells dog. And if it spells dog, see if there are any other words running sideways or up and down. And you will find that out of that random or semi-random group of words and letters that are written, that you can find, things that you're telling it to find. Find the word dog. Okay, well, how do I rearrange the letters and skip through them and get dog out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And so they've run this test, and so you have to be careful how you translate or how you do the skip code. And here's another thing. The skip code for the rabbis, and even for the priests that have been trained to be priests in the new temple that's coming, these guys would not let the code out to the goy. They would not release that code. And so all this other stuff is red herring. It really is. Now, there are things I know that I was taught by the rabbis who do study this stuff, the physicists who are rabbis as well. And they've shown me things and the coding, and it has nothing to do with the way these guys are doing it. This is just a red herring.
Well, let me ask you something else before we get too far down. Would you just share just a real quick, I guess rendition of the coming deception before we just run out of time here in a little while?
Are we running out of time already? Oh,
huh?
All right. Well, look. In 2010, a couple years ago, I was really inspired to start retranslating 8 verses of the book of Daniel. And those 8 verses have been very hard for people to, like formal scholars. I'm not a formal scholar, but for the formal established scholars, they couldn't translate these 8 verses and get them where they all agreed on them. And the 8 verses are, quickly, Daniel 2, 41 through 44, Daniel 11, 36 through 39. Now, I retranslated them, and it took me 3 months to do this because I'm slow, and I also had to do a lot of historical research around the period of time and where Daniel was and what he was meaning. And although I won't, if we're running that short for time, I won't go through the whole translation, but I will say
we've got another half hour at least. So.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then let's do that. I found it unusual in the first part, in the Daniel 2:41 through 44. I found it unusual that Daniel used a different word for clay in 3 verses, and there was no reason to change it. I mean, clay is clay, right? But when I retranslated it and looked into the Arabic and to the Chaldean and the Aramaic, and one of them was even Sumerian, into the origin of these words, I found out that one kind of clay he was talking about was thin, fragile clay, as found in clay baskets or clay pottery. Another type of clay was made west of Chaldea, there toward the Mediterranean, and it's called Nabatean, fine painted pottery. And then there was the especially thin clay from the land of Tinah. So all these required, digging into history and finding out what the heck he was talking about. But they're using the clay in the original verse, as you see it in English. It says, let's see here, what does it say? Let's see. Okay, Daniel 2:41. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part of the potter's clay and the part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of the iron and part of the clay, and so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And it goes on. Now, okay, clay, toes, iron, legs. Okay, now this was showing the evolution of the major world powers from the time of Babylon right down till now, after the 2 legs of the Roman Empire, the east and west legs, split. And, of course, on each foot there were 5 toes. Now, it doesn't say that half of them were clay or that half of them were iron. It just says there were clay and iron toes. So I thought, well, now why use all this kind of different words for clay? And so here's how I won't just go into all the details that I do in my book. I show you the actual Hebrew, and why I translated it, and what my source was, so that people can, double check what I did. Okay. Now, when I translated, this is how those 4 verses read, starting at Daniel 2:41. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part of fearful, fragile clay, that's humans, and part of clay smashing iron, that's the ones from Satan that are coming, that are going to be posing as angels and messengers of light and bringing us technology to unify the planet. And of clay smashing iron, the kingdom, that's the earth, shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the clay smashing iron. So it'll be strong in portions. For as much as you saw the clay smashing iron mixed together by negotiation with the thin, fragile clay of Tinah. Now this is saying the strong iron, the iron stuff from the satanic ones who are descending in their craft and whatever, they're going to negotiate with the thin, fragile clay of Tinah, which is a fine, fragile clay. It was highly prized in the ancient days, and that's like a human being in his little body. He's fragile, and so those that have got the strength of iron are going to be negotiating. And then it says, and as the toes of the feet were part of the clay smashing iron, and part of broken shards of clay vessels, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw the clay smashing iron, the fallen ones, mixed together by negotiation with the thin, fragile clay of Tinah, humans, the clay smashing iron regions of the immortal strangers, gods, from the heavens shall be part of the same world kingdom with the regions of the seed of mortal mankind. But these mortals and immortals shall not stick together, even as clay smashing iron will not mix with the weak, fragile, fodder-like clay of Tinah, which is something to trample underfoot or to scatter or shatter. So, that's just 4 verses, and it's talking already about, an alien invasion of people posing to be gods. In Enoch, for instance, in Enoch, the 7th chapter of Enoch, verse 1 through 5, it says, and all the others together with them took unto them wives. It's like Genesis 6, in the Bible. took unto them wives, and each chose for himself one wife. And they began to go in unto them and to defile themselves with these women. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Now, when you think about that, what I just read, the last part of that translation was saying that they're going to treat the clay of Tanakh as fodder like clay. That's what you eat. So that movie that was on TV in the 70s and later, more recently on TV now, it's called V. Right. The author of that was kind of telling you these lizard-like things that look like humans are really, they're coming to consume. And Satan is described as a hungry lion going, back and forth. And it just, maybe they're going to consume souls rather than body, but there's still something that is not good.
And it seems, Stan and Larry, that every time this object comes around our solar system, we find this phenomena of this giants, this Nephilim, this Anunnaki surfacing all of a sudden. It happened in the Exodus. Remember that when Moses took the Israelites out of Egypt, well, they started finding out that these giants were everywhere, and they had to fight them, of course, and it's all recorded there, and even David had to kill a whole slew of them. Some of them, as we read in the scripture, says they had the head of a lion, and they were. I mean, one of them was Og of Bashan, was about almost like 16 feet tall. His bed was like huge, and then we have all these other records, and then of course during the flood, of course we see the same thing happening. So there is a repetition here, almost like every time this object approaches, these entities begin to appear. Now, I have heard reports. Again, these are just reports and rumors, and we cannot confirm it one way or the other. But that this object, this brown dwarf, has like 7 orbitals, objects, orbiting around it, and maybe at least one, maybe 2 of them are inhabited. Of course, these are just, Zechariah Sitchin he talked about it. There have been others that have talked about it, and we cannot confirm that. But again, it is a very interesting, theory, because it does seem to correlate to what we see happening in the Bible. That like these giants didn't just exist in Genesis 6, but there seem to be other explosions afterwards, of these Nephilims, this Anunnaki, at other times that that mankind had to deal with, and they did the same things. They did the same things. They in the book of Exodus, and we find that when they visited this city, they had these giants were producing humongous fruit there, tomatoes and grapefruits. They probably were doing the same things that they have taught mankind today. Here, DNA manipulation, hybrid fruits and hybrids veggies and hybrids even animals, and they probably were doing the same thing there as well. And we just don't see the giants walking around now, because from what I have learned, they may have perfected the DNA manipulation so that they don't look like giants anymore. They are basically look like us. They may have maybe a few different features in their physique, mostly their eyes, from what I've read, but they look about the same as any person. So they're harder to identify, but they're walking right now. They're walking among us, and I know that you, Larry, have had an experience where you saw these entities trying to take children. For some reason, they want the children. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to share that?
Well, that was basically the arrival, what I call the arrival dream, that were these huge craft, that were totally, soundless. I mean, there was no sound at all. And the thing about that was the fact that when these craft came over and settled whatever area they landed in, and this is the bizarre thing about it, whatever area they landed in, the law and the military assisted in the cordoning off of those areas, and they actually took the children. They took all the children of a certain, up to a certain age, and then, they were taken one place, and the other people were rounded up, and I didn't know really what happened. The thing was that they really came for the children, the youth. Really odd. I mean, it was a very odd dream, but very vivid.
Yeah. I mean, this thing, I think is happening now, but we have not seen the full manifestation yet, which I think it ties in with the latest dream I had about, Isaac. When I saw this storm Isaac, and the messenger of the Lord said, that this would bring great change, that he was going to bring great change, and it was going to cause, it was going to be followed by cataclysms, and also it was going to be a precursor, a harbinger, if you will, of the manifestation of the sons of God. Now, when I heard that, at first I thought it was, us, the manifestation of the sons of God, and that could well be too. But also it could be the manifestation of the fallen angels, the fallen angelic beings, also as well. So both manifesting as well. These entities manifesting, like Stan was talking about, these fallen angels manifesting, and also the sons of God manifesting, the bride manifesting, the manifestations of his bride, his, the elect. And I think this is going to go hand in hand. The darkness and the light, I mean, that's what the Lord has shown me, that one thing is going to happen and then the other is going to happen. It's not going to be just one. It's going to be very closely related here.
Well, one of the things, Stan, is the fact that, I remember when you was doing the work on the Daniel that you actually finally put out in your book, and one of the things you felt at that time that this was all pretty much, if you want to use the term imminent, I don't mean imminent like it happened yesterday or today, but very, very close, to the other things that were occurring.
Yeah. Let me just clarify one point first, Larry. Augusto, you were saying that the last time that this Nibiru crossing occurred would have been at the time of the Exodus. Now, are you subscribing to the Exodus period of around 1587 BC versus the 1200 date?
I think so. I think that would be the time, right? When if you go back, 1600 years plus or minus, that would put us around there, more or less.
All right. Well, 3600, yeah. Okay, now, I think that the only way we can arrive at that date is with the Septuagint translation of the Patriarch's ages at death. Is that the way you see it?
I think so.
Okay, I'm just trying to make all these little things work. Now, Larry, what were you asking me again?
Oh, I was just mentioning the fact that, when you actually did the work in Daniel, I had heard you on a couple of radio shows after that, and you put your book out, Cosmic Conspiracy, that included, that you were saying that you felt that there wasn't a lot of time between the imminence of that arrival, that felt like soon, I'll use the term soon like God does a little bit, that we're close.
Yeah, I did feel that urgency, Larry. I had to get it into the book and put it as an extra chapter or an appendix, actually, at the end of the book, because I tried to leave the first 200 pages as I originally wrote them. But I put every addition that I made since I first wrote the book at the end of the book in separate sections so people can see what I was thinking and talking about through the last 35 years. But this one, with its translation from Daniel, I mean, I've only just scratched the surface of what's still hidden there. in the book. You remember, Larry, we were talking about how a lot of people thought that in Daniel 11:37, where the Antichrist says, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God. Yeah. Okay. For he shall magnify himself above all. And in the beginning, we were thinking, whoever this world leader, this Antichrist, he's going to be a queer. He's not going to like the desire of women. But this is not what it meant at all. If you know that Daniel was from the court in Jerusalem, he was educated before they took him away to be a captive in Babylon. And he knew Jewish law and history. And one of the things that was preeminent in the minds of Israeli women was they wanted to be the mother of the Messiah that is to come. So that was the desire of the women of Israel.
That's a good point.
Okay, so now let's read it like it should be read. Neither shall he, the Antichrist, regard the God of his fathers, nor the Son of God, nor regard any other God, for he shall magnify himself above all. Do you see how it reads now?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
very interesting.
And it is, and it just didn't make sense. But linguistically, you have to have things connected that are of equal value. And the desire of women has nothing to do with any God, the God of gods. And it didn't fit. And
that's right.
So I had to persevere to find that. But as you know, God said to Daniel, this book is going to be sealed up until the end days. And picking away at it, there have been other people who picked away at the 69 weeks and the 1 week that wasn't fulfilled, which is now going to be the tribulation period. And we've been picking away at Daniel and gradually understanding what is written in code there, but it's written for people who are of the book, the Hebrews and the Christians. You wouldn't know how to translate if you didn't have that background. And get this, that little phrase I read you there, Daniel 11:37, he shall not regard the God of his fathers, blah, blah, blah.
That makes that so much clearer.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And when it says at the end of it, he shall magnify himself above all, above every God. Okay. In Daniel 11:36, just before 37, there's a phrase called above every God. And it's only 3 words, and in Hebrew, they are al, kal, el. Every one of those words is 2 letters in Hebrew and ends in an L. Now, in Hebrew, the L is the lamed, right in the middle of the alphabet, like ours. And it stands tall above all the other letters and can see from the A to the Z. It can see all the alphabet from its high position of its head. And it's written like it's a snake coiled. Now, it is the wisdom letter in the history, in the wisdom school's history. Lamed, El, is the knowledge, the wisdom letter. And if you think about the Garden of Eden, when they ate the tree of knowledge that the snake gave to them, you can see why they chose Lamed. And in what we're looking at here, in those 3 words, Al, Kal, El, there's another message that I'm trying to figure out. The sum of the letters, the fact they've got 3 Lameds, is that something to do with 666? There's more stuff to be decoded here, and I've only just scratched the surface, but I've told people where to look to keep on finding. It's just, the cosmic conspiracy is something that I wrote after I'd had my out-of-body experience, and it was like 8 years later, in a country halfway around the world, that I wrote this, and great upheavals, but I hate to write, and yet these things the good Lord gave me to write, so there you go.
Amen.
Hey, Stan, I've still got one of your ancient copies, the original that I obtained from you years, the Vindicator Scrolls, and I looked on Amazon the other day, and my God, they're worth a lot of money now.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. If I get time this year and things don't take us away, all of us, I will try to make that a digital book because it's just too expensive to print and color again like that. Horribly expensive. But if I do it as a digital book, then people can just buy it and download it off our website, just not paying $300 or $400 a copy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So well, I'll tell you what, and the way times have changed, I remember what I call the good old days. When I first met you, Stan, you were sending out physical newsletters. You remember those days?
Oh, I remember well. Holly would sit across from me there in the office, and she'd work on those things and show me what she was doing, and artwork them, and they were very nice newsletters.
They were great, and you kind of outgrew them. I mean, you got involved in so much that you just can't anymore. Everything's happening so fast now, and I know Holly knows this for a fact. Up early, I think, to start research news. But I do, and the news moves so fast, it almost disallows a physical newsletter because of the timeliness.
It does, and you look at it, because Holly, since we got back to the States in 2001, she's been doing our website with news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she did it before that, but this was like on the spot here news, and every day, except Saturday. But, 6 days a week, she's up there doing news. And that's the quickest way that she can get new information out to people that are trying to find out what's happening. As you say, there's not time to print it and put it out, because by the time you get it out, it's old news.
Good point. Yeah.
Excuse
Thank
me,
goodness
guys.
we have this. Pardon?
Excuse me. We're
All right.
down to a little over 9 minutes in the live stream. You want to let me know if you want to go into the archives. And we do have another question from the chat. Neil wants to know if Stan thinks Israel will attack Iran before or after our election.
That's a hot question.
Isn't it?
What do you reckon, Augusto?
Oh, man. That could go either way. That could go either way. On one side, we got Netanyahu threatening and thinking that if Obama is not elected, he's going to be dealing with a new president that doesn't want a war, and so he's thinking about pushing the button. But it could be afterwards. Obama's trying to work a deal with him. I don't know. That is really a tough one to answer.
It is, and I've been reading reports and getting emails from out of Israel from people over there that the public is kind of divided on whether they should act on Iran preemptively or not, and yet the majority of the leadership of Israel at the moment says we better do it, and they know that America under Obama is backing away from Israel. It's not really honoring its commitment, and it's embarrassing Israel with promises and lies that never happen anyway. So Obama wants Netanyahu to hold off pushing the button until after the election, so for his own convenience, so he says. But I don't know, with the latest discoveries of the deep underground nuclear facilities that the International Nuclear Monitoring Group cannot get access to in Iran. With that, Iran may be much further along than most of us out here know, but I am sure that Israel knows what Iran's up to. So they may be forced just to take action before the election if it gets serious over there, because in Iran, because they could launch it and Israel couldn't stop it. They've got to basically nip it in the bud. And another computer virus isn't going to do it. There's going to have to be something pretty horrific happen over in Iran to stop it. And when they do that, of course, then Russia is going to have to come down and be an ally to Iran and to Syria. And the United States, under a different president, could be a threat. So a lot depends on this election as to whether or not Russia is going to try to take out or have terrorists take out the infrastructure of the United States. We're going to get hit because we could potentially be big supporters and fight Russia in the Middle East. But we know that's not going to happen because it'll be an act of God that stops the Russian troops on the northern hills of Israel. All this is coming almost immediately because, as the scriptures say, Israel will burn the weapons of the dead soldiers from that war, from that invasion, for 7 years, and they'll bury the dead for 7 months. So 7 years is a tribulation period. So at the beginning of that period, we're going to have the Russian invasion of Israel, and this could spark all that, what the decision that Netanyahu makes now.
Now, just before we had the program, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he told me on the phone, I haven't had a chance to verify it, but he said that the Russian troops were pulling out of their base there in Syria. They were basically abandoning it. Now, like I said, I haven't confirmed it, but if that is true, that means something is up, and they're evacuating.
Well, now, think about it. when the Scripture says that Damascus had become a ruinous heap overnight, it didn't say that Israel attacked it or that Russia did it or that some foreign power wiped it out. They have got weapons of mass destruction stored there, probably in Damascus, that were taken from Saddam Hussein when he slipped them across the border to get away from being, labeled a terrible person. And there might be nuclear, there might be biological, and those, if it's a nuke, it may just go off all by itself. Who knows? Some idiot may push the button there that say, all right, if you're not going to free us, we're going to destroy Damascus. But Damascus will become a ruinous heap, and no one will live in it again. And that sounds like a nuclear device.
It sure does.
Now,
well, Augusto, I did verify that report. I've got it from two different sources out of Israel that Putin has ordered a total evacuation of the base at Tartus, the Tartus port, and that all ships have already backed off out of that area except the one that they're loading the rest of their people on. It's really an unusual move, Stan, for Russia to be backing off of that base, It would make me think that something could happen shortly that they didn't want their involved in.
Well, it's like hooks in the jaws pulled them down. Hey, they didn't want to do it.
That's right.
I mean, it's just the Scripture just unfolding, prophecy unfolding right before our eyes. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, as one Chinese philosopher cursed upon someone else and said, may you live in interesting times, and it's not a blessing, it's a curse.
That's very true.
That is
How
true.
are we on time, Dorothy?
We've got 4 minutes left in the live stream. Everybody wants you to do a part 2 if you don't continue.
Well, we may have to try to get together again sometime and do a part 2. And do you have anything you want to share for the next 3.5 or 4 minutes with everybody? We usually get quite a few people tune in.
Well, maybe Stan can give his website information and his materials, Dorothy and Larry, and I can just mention my website, and Larry can mention his.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. Augusto, you start. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's our website is www.theappearance.com. And just visit there. We got a lot of stuff there. Audio files. We got newsletters. We got a page for new converts. It's all for new converts. And so just visit there and avail yourself of all the stuff we have there. It's all free, except the books that we had to purchase.
Right. Larry.
Oh, mine's real easy. LarryWTaylor.org. Just go there and read some weird stuff. Go ahead, Stan. Use some time up.
Okay. Now, our website is standeyo.com. That's STANDEYO.com. Holly updates that, as I say, 6 days a week. She's up 2 hours, 3 hours before I am, and updating that news for people to get the fresh news of what they really need to hear. And if you want to look at some of the illustrations of what we're talking about today with the planets and stars, you go to our website at standeyo.com, and you click on Stan's Corner up at the top. You'll see it, and you'll see on that page several things to choose from. Choose Stan's Show Images, and on there are sections about the hollow planets, about the aliens, about my book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, and Holly's book, The Dare to Prepare book. All these things you can just pull down and use and look at and understand more about what I was talking about today. We have links to our prophecy section on there, particularly about the rapture situation, what's about to happen now. And as new subjects come up, I update this page, so you need to kind of check it every now and then and see if I've got a new section or part of a section that updated, something like that. And our books, the two lead books we have, one is for physical preparation, Dare to Prepare, 632 pages of practical information for what's coming and how to prepare for it. And number two, the spiritual preparation, which is The Cosmic Conspiracy, which the final edition of it was written in 2010. And those two together, we sell them as a package because they complement one another in many ways. And that's it, guys.
Well, Stan, I appreciate you so much coming on with us and sharing. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. I mean, no doubt about it. You and Holly both. And give my love to Holly. I know, she works, and I realize it every day. And Augusto, I want to thank you very much. I know you might not want to hear we need to do this again, but we really do. I was watching the queue a while ago, and people saying we've got to have a part 2. So down the road we may be able to get together again, but I appreciate so much, Stan, you coming on and giving us some of your time.
Not a problem.
Well, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Augusto.
Hey, I enjoyed it, Stan. I do agree. We need to do it again, and I think we had a lot of important stuff and interesting things, and I appreciate you inviting me, Larry and Dorothy, and hey, I enjoyed it. I really did.
It was fun.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on very much, and I'd like to say to everybody, thanks for coming. Father bless, and hope to see you all again soon.
All right. Night.
That's good. God bless you guys.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Talk to you later. We'll do it again.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.